Hello learners, welcome back to Constant Learners. In this video, we are going to discuss what are candidate keys and how we can identify the candidate keys from super keys. Before that, this entire table is known as a relation. The vertical columns are known as attributes. This is very important. And these horizontal rows are known as tuples or record. Each row stores data about one entry. Alright? If it is a student's table, one row will store data about one student. Now these attributes, these columns can either be unique or non-unique. When they are unique, they can be considered to form the keys. When they are non-unique, they are also known as non-key attributes. Keys are the columns that can help us to uniquely identify a row or a tuple. That means in a table, if I have thousands or millions of rows of data, then one particular column should be able to look for that particular data entry which I am looking for. That means it should be able to identify the data entry. So keys act as identifiers because they can uniquely identify the row that we are looking for, the data that we are looking for. Then super keys is superset. Superset because it includes all the keys that we can form from a table. Alright, it could be formed from a single attribute, from two or more than two attributes, or it can also be a combination of all the attributes present in that table. Also, we ended the video on a note that super keys help us to identify the candidate keys, and this is the main topic of this video. Now, candidate key is a subset of super key. We discussed that super key is a superset because it includes all the keys that are possible in a table, right? Now, out of all of these keys, we are going to select some of the keys to become the candidate keys, alright? So, if from a table, let's say I have been able to identify 37 super keys. I've got 37 super keys from a table. Out of these 37 super keys, some super keys, either one or more than one super keys are eligible to become the candidate keys. That is why we say that candidate keys are the subset of super keys. But how do we select the candidate keys? Now, minimal super keys are known as candidate keys. I'm not saying minimum super keys. I'm not saying that the super keys that have minimum number of attributes will be the candidate key. No. Minimal super keys means what? The super keys that contain no redundant attribute will become the candidate key. Let's understand what do we mean by this. Now we've already discussed how to identify the super keys. We'll take some examples. First, a single attribute by itself can be a super key. For example, here SID is unique in itself. Every student has a different student ID, right? So it is unique in itself and thus it's going to be a super key. So SID is a super key. Similarly, here I have a column named Aadhaar number. Aadhaar number is a unique identification proof of the people living in India, right? So it is unique for every individual, right? So Aadhaar number is also unique and it can uniquely identify the tuples. Thus, Aadhaar number alone by itself will also be a super key, right? Rest other attributes are not unique. Here, there are two students with the same name, Raju. There are two students who are sharing the same phone number. There are two students who are belonging to the same department. So, these are all non-unique or non-key attributes. So, alone, single attributes can be super keys. Then, a combination of non-unique attributes along with the super key attributes can also be a super key. For example, name. Name is a non-key attribute or non-unique attribute, but a combination of name and student ID. This will become a super key? Yes. Similarly, a combination of SID and phone number will also be a super key. Aadhaar number and department will also be a super key. Aadhaar number and name will also be a super key. So, any non-key attribute, when it is combined with a super key, it will again give us a super key. Then, the third example could be, again, non-unique attribute, a super key, and another non-unique attribute. For example, a combination of phone number is non-unique attribute. Aadhaar number is a super key by itself. And department is also a non-unique attribute. So this combination can also be a super key because this combination will give us unique values and this combination can uniquely identify the tuples in the table, right? Then another example could be a combination of two non-unique attributes. These can also create a super key. Now here, name column is not a super key and phone number also is not a super key. By itself, it's not unique. But a combination of name and phone number is unique. So even though there are two students with the same name and there are two students who are sharing the same phone number, the combination of name and phone number is unique, right? So it can be considered as a super key. So the combination of name and phone number is unique and it can be considered as a super key. Name and department will not be a super key because here also Raju is in the CS department and here this Raju is also in the CS department. So combination of name and department is not unique and thus it cannot be a super key. But a combination of phone number and department is also a super key. It is giving us unique value, right? So phone number and department is also a super key. Then we can also have three non-unique attributes combined together to form a super key, right? For example, let's say we have name, phone number and department. A combination of these three will also become a super key. Now let's discuss how do we select candidate keys from these super keys. These are not all super keys. I've just taken a few super keys out of all the super keys from this relation. This relation is eligible to make a lot more super keys. Now, here this SID is a single attribute. Aadhaar number is a single attribute. So whenever a super key is made up of one single attribute, it is definitely going to be unique in itself. SID is a unique attribute. Aadhaar number is also a unique attribute. Thus, they can uniquely identify any rows or tuples in a relation. Thus, both of them are minimal super keys. And we know that minimal super keys are nothing but candidate keys. Candidate keys are minimal super keys. Thus, both SID and Aadhaar number will be the candidate keys. So, any super keys that have a single attribute will definitely mandatorily become the candidate keys also. Alright, any super keys that have only one attribute will also be the candidate keys. Now here, name is a non-unique attribute. That means it is not a super key, but SID is a super key. Now whenever we get a super key from a combination of super key along with a non-unique attribute, then that combination is not eligible to become a candidate key. Whenever an attribute from a super key itself is a super key, then that super key will not become a candidate key. Now let's see this super key here. Phone number, Aadhaar number and department. Phone number is not a super key, department is not a super key. But Aadhaar number itself is a super key. Now since Aadhaar number itself is a super key, then this entire combination of super key will not become eligible to be the candidate keys. Alright, I hope you're understanding this. Whenever a combination, a super key is made of the combination of another super key with other non-key attributes, then that combination cannot become a candidate key. Alright, so here we have a super key, here also we have a super key, and thus this combination cannot become a candidate key. Now here, name is not a super key, phone number is also not a super key. So by itself, these two attributes are not super keys. And therefore, this combination is eligible to become a candidate key. So here we have name and phone number. This combination is also a minimal super key because there is no other attribute in this combination that is a super key in itself. Name in itself is not a super key. Phone number in itself is not a super key. Thus, this is a minimal super key and it is eligible to become a candidate key also. Also, phone number and department, they can be super keys because phone number in itself is not a super key and department in itself is also not a super key, and thus this combination is eligible to become the candidate. Now here again we have name. Name in itself is not a super key, phone number in itself is not a super key, and department in itself is not a super key. But a combination of name and phone number is a super key. Here we have name and phone number, this combination is a super key, and a combination of phone number and department is also a super key. So this entire super key is made up of a combination of other super keys. Therefore, this combination is also not eligible to become a candidate key. I hope that this was clear. That means if a super key is made up of some non-key attributes combined with another super key, then that super key cannot be eligible to become a candidate key. And this is what we mean by minimal super keys. So candidate keys are minimal super keys. Now another important point is that the attributes of super keys can have null values. What do we mean by that? See, there's a possibility that some students may not have a phone number. Let's say the student named Manju does not have a phone, and so she does not have a phone number. So this cell here will remain empty. That means we are taking null values for this column known as phone number, right? So candidate keys, the attributes of candidate keys can have null values. See, almost every student will have an Aadhaar number. But let's say there's a possibility that a student did not make his Aadhaar card. Or if we say we have passport number, a column with passport number, there's a possibility that a student does not have a passport. He will not have a passport number, right? So in that case, the column for passport number or the column for Aadhaar number will stay empty for that particular student. Thus, we say that candidate keys can take null values, or the attributes of candidate keys can take null values. Then we can get one or more than one candidate keys. For example, from this relation, we have received 1, 2, 3, and 4 candidate keys. Alright, so we can get one or more than one candidate keys. Also, candidate keys provide us with primary key. Now, this is a very important concept. Primary keys, we need to understand how we can get primary keys from candidate keys. If you've understood super keys, if you've understood candidate keys, then primary key, it will be very easy for you to understand how we can get primary key from the candidate keys. But that we're going to discuss in the next video. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you understood, if you have any doubts, you can write them in the comment section below and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching.